Hello, I'm Cute Spooky, and this is what I look like today. Why do I look like this today? Because today I'm becoming a chaotic matchmaker and love Ghostie. This is the perfect cozy game to kick off the spooky season. You play as an adorable ghost haunting a manor, and make the residents fall in love with each other. I received a code for this game, and I'm about to make that everybody else's problem. So, let's get to shipping. First, I needed to pick out my first 4 residents. I immediately knew I had to go for this emo giraffe, because he reminded me of myself in middle school. I also had to go with the frog, because he's a frog. Or is he? I then picked 2 residents I thought would match up well with those. I chose this preppy cat for my emo giraffe, because he was a punk, she did ballet. What more can I say? And I chose a robot for... okay, I just picked the robot because their application won me over. With that, I decided I would find matches for these 4 within my first month of the game. But it had to feel right. I couldn't pair them up with just anyone. With this challenge set before me, I was ready to become the best matchmaker the afterlife had ever seen. It was move-in day, and every resident had their own special move-in scene, complete with a track to match their personality. In Mina's scene, I realized she had a complex about being short, so I was even more determined to pair her up with Gerard. I snooped around and read their most private thoughts, then gave Mina a couch potato plush and said it was from Gerard. She loved it, and it triggered their first convo. She was angry at him for hearing wailing and screaming coming from his room in the middle of the night. He claimed it was spirits, and this freaked her out. Come on guys, spirits? Could you imagine? I love how puffy her tail got. Well, that did not go as expected, but there's always next time. The next day, I immediately stole this cute clock because I knew Mina was going to love it. I read her diary, and she was freaked out about the ghost. The clock should make it better, but I wasn't paying attention and ran out of action points. Gifting would have to wait until tomorrow. On day 3, I read Mina's diary, and she wrote about the clock. Turns out she had wanted it all along, but couldn't reach the shelf at the store. I realized Gerard would be able to reach things on higher shelves for her, and cried because that's so cute. I set them out on their first date to go cloud gazing. To my surprise, Gerard could only see clouds, but Mina turned out to be a weirdo who saw a hamburger doing karate. I love that from her. She is the roar random to his I made you a cookie, but I eated it. As soon as day 4 started, they were having a conversation. Gerard started talking about the ghosts again and said it was up to them to take them on. Mina was scared, but she decided she was down to hunt them anyway. He told her she would need a net and a cake to trap them, and for some reason she agreed to this. She wrote about him in her journal. Gerard had nothing to say about her though. Awkward. I gave Ollin a fountain from BEEP0 because I'd been so focused on Gerard and Mina up to this point, I kind of forgot those 2 existed. Their first combo triggered, and I was excited. My challenge would be so easy if they hit it off too. In this convo, Ollin put all his chores on BEEP0, so he could go watch a movie by himself, even though BEEP0 just told him he enjoys movies too. This was not looking promising. I set Gerard and Mina up on a picnic date to end the day. Unfortunately, they did not coordinate. Gerard brought cups and Mina brought napkins, so they had no food or drinks for their picnic. Then they got attacked by ants and ran away. So that could have gone better. I started day 5 by reading Mina's diary, and she had written about the ghost hunting plan. Gerard still had nothing to say, but oh my god, they were talking in his room. I gave him a record, but he was too distracted by her to look at it right away. Eventually he opened it, and he loved it. I set them out on a date to play a board game, and hopefully it would go better than the picnic date. During the date, Mina read all the rules, but Gerard couldn't remember any of them. Instead of getting frustrated, she decided they should play a co-op game instead, so they could learn the rules and work together. She really is the best. Gerard wrote the edgiest entry overnight, but it was confirmed he liked her. It's all coming together. Meanwhile, Ollin wrote about how good BEEP0 is at doing chores. Ugh. I gave BEEP0 a rocket ship since he deserves it, and it triggered another convo. In this one, BEEP0 was crying, and Ollin was only interested in fixing him so he could do more chores for him. Ollin said he had no idea he was hurting BEEP0 when he finally spoke up for himself. But no, I'm done with him. BEEP0 is my son, and I will not have him treated that way. I bought a cactus plush from Ghost Amazon and set Mina and Gerard out on a date to the art gallery. Mina thought the gallery was beautiful and said some edgy stuff which impressed Gerard. I was impressed too. She puts on a cutesy appearance, but she's surprisingly deep. On day 7, they were finally ready to confront the ghost. It turned out it was Gerard the whole time, and he lied to her to teach her a lesson. She cried and ran away. Gerard, you're a real dongus. She even wrote about you in her diary again. I gave her the cactus plush I ordered yesterday, and she loved it. Don't worry, girl. We're gonna make this right. I found a pink ice cream lamp that I thought she would like right after. BEEP0 wrote about the rocket ship Ollin gifted him, but no, you deserve better, BEEP0. Do not settle. Ollin wrote about how mean he's been. And yeah, you think about what you've done. I gave Mina the ice cream lamp I found earlier because she deserves the world. I set her up on a painting date with Gerard. Didn't go as well as I imagined. They bought a bootleg painting kit that required you to solve math equations to figure out which color to use, so they ended up scrapping it. The next day, I found cute balloons and a stranded painting. These would make perfect gifts for my favorite couple. As I conducted my regular snooping, I found out Gerard felt bad about his prank and was wanting to make it up to Mina. I gave him the painting to encourage him. When I went to check on Mina, she was talking to BEEP0 in her room. I gave her the balloons before she could change her mind about Gerard. That night, Mina and Gerard were ready to make things official and move out together. I approved of it right away. In their last scene, he apologized to her for being a jerk. He promised not to screech in the middle of the night like a little freak. They made up and decided to eat the cake Mina brought to catch the fake ghost. Looks like that cake did capture the ghost after all. Now, bring out the net. The next day, I found that they left behind miniature plushies of themselves that I will cherish for the rest of my life. I checked the memory board in the kitchen so I could see their relationship epilogue. In it, they talked about their feelings over more cake. With their rooms empty, it was just the frog and robot left. But Ghost Reddit told me more residents would move in tomorrow. On day 10, a cute plant and a dad of an elephant moved in. I gave the plant a mushroom plush from Ollin. Maybe she would be his match. In their first scene, Galathea ends up using Ollin's royal chalice to keep bugs in, and it breaks. So, I don't think this relationship's gonna work out. I wouldn't want to date a girl who uses my special cup for bugs, but maybe Felix and Ollin would work. I set them up on a spa date. Ollin was relatable here, and they flirted immediately. I think Felix might be the one for him. Ollin wrote about Felix in his diary, so I set a coffee date for them. I gave Galathea a laundry basket from BEEP0, since her and Ollin didn't work out. In their first conversation, if you can call it that, BEEP0 studied her like she was a specimen, all while narrating his observations out loud right behind her. Oh, BEEP0. Ollin drank way too much coffee on the coffee date. And I must say, Felix was really bringing out his cute side. Felix and Ollin had a conversation first thing in the morning. Ollin was explaining frog royalty life, but Felix wasn't paying any attention. Ollin couldn't even get mad properly because Felix's replies were so baffling. He knew just how to deal with Ollin's attitude. Ollin wrote about Felix in his diary because he was rightfully obsessed. I set them up for another date, this time shopping. They found a rideable dinosaur that took them through a tunnel to a secret food court and went off on that adventure together. I'm jealous of their mall. Do malls even exist anymore? On day 13, my horns finally grew in, and I unlocked decorating, which quickly became one of my favorite parts about this game. Anyway, back to being dark-sided. Ollin wrote about Felix not paying attention during their last conversation in his journal. I sent them on a karaoke date, so he'd have no choice but to pay attention to him. But they didn't really know what they were doing and had to scatter because the owner thought they broke the machine due to their horrible singing. The next morning, BEEP0 and Galathea were having a conversation. BEEP0 decided to set the humidity in her room to 99% and put rocks all over her floor because it turns out he's a mad scientist. This definitely wasn't gonna work out. Ollin and Felix had a conversation right after, and Felix was so funny, but Ollin doesn't appreciate good humor. I thought he would write about it, but he just wrote about loving himself. Galathea wrote about how BEEP0 tried to kill her yesterday. I really need to find someone he can be normal around. I gave a backpack to Felix, but accidentally used my last point, stealing a strawberry plushie before I could set anyone up on a date. Shiny syndrome. Felix wrote about Calathea last night instead of Ollin. I gave him a pet rock to remind him that he's meant to be with Ollin. Ollin, on the other hand, wrote about Felix because he is loyal, royal, and loyal. I then set them up on a fort building date. Felix had never made one before, but he ended up being a master at it and made a secret room in the fort. Ollin wanted to join him, and Felix said he'd enjoy his company. I started day 17 by finding a pumpkin plushie and stole it for myself. Perfect. Felix wrote about Ollin and said he's all he can think about. It's a done deal now. I gave Ollin a tea set and they were ready to move forward. They talked about a letter Ollin gave to Felix where he confronted him about his feelings. I set them up on a date to go to a play that night to make up. It ended up being a children's play, but they had a good time anyway because they got to spend time together. I gave Ollin some fancy tea on day 18 and checked Felix's diary to find that he's written about him. Calathea and BEEP0 wanted to have a conversation. I almost forgot about them since the incident. BEEP0 apologized for thinking she was high maintenance. She taught him about the concept of self-care and decided to help him treat himself. But too bad. I've already decided it's not happening. I sent Ollin and Felix on a date to collect seashells on the beach. Ollin watched 5 hours of videos about shell collecting and brought everything they'd need for the date. Felix came completely unprepared. Felix really does bring out Ollin's cute side. I expanded the manor on day 19, so 2 more residents moved in, Apollo and Kamel. Apollo dropped what looked to be a science book during his move-in scene, so I was pretty sure I had finally found the perfect partner for BEEP0. I sent them on a nerdy date to go to a convention. Apollo loved it. BEEP0 wanted something from a booth that was far away from them, and there was a crowd around it, and he was gonna give up on it. Apollo wasn't having that though, and vowed to run over and buy everything at the booth for him. His enthusiasm was wild, and things were looking promising. Not much happened on day 20. Apollo wrote a long entry about BEEP0, and BEEP0 wrote about him too. I gave Felix some postcards, but it wasn't enough to trigger a convo between them. I gifted a gotcha machine to BEEP0 the next day, which triggered their next conversation. Apollo called BEEP0 his best friend, and BEEP0 took this a bit too seriously. I gave BEEP0 a futuristic clock right after that conversation, and another one triggered. This time, BEEP0 sent him 100 letters about being Apollo's best friend because he was afraid he wouldn't receive the first one. He kinda also stalked all his friends and said he was going to defeat one of them in wrestling. This robot ain't quite right. I was a little worried about the tiger's safety, so naturally I set them up on a bookstore date that night. Apollo showed me he was a big nerd who enjoys reading scientific papers, and the date was a critical success. I checked Apollo's journal the next day, and he was naturally confused about what the heck BEEP0 was doing. I sent Ollin and Felix on a carnival date. They played a balloon pop game, and Ollin got a bit obsessive over it. He played it for an hour, trying to win, and ran out of money, so they had to go home right after. Worst date ever. That was not enough to deter Felix though, because the next day, they were ready to move out together. They made up after talking about their previous misunderstanding. It turned out Ollin just wanted to impress him with those big words Felix couldn't understand. They left behind their cute plushies, and I checked the board right after to see their epilogue. Ollin was teaching Felix more about frog culture, and found out Felix was actually raised by polar bears instead of elephants. They decided to have a date where they would share dishes from their respective cultures. Felix brought a literal polar bear dish to dinner instead of food. Oh, Felix, never change. This left me with BEEP0 to find a partner for, and I only had a week to do it. Apollo only wrote about renewing his library card since their last date, so that was not a good sign. A goth sheep Baddie and a polar bear moved in on day 24 to take the place of the last couple, but I had already decided Apollo would be the one for BEEP0. On day 25, I unlocked the ability to scam other ghosties for money. The final couple was ready to further their relationship. BEEP0 said he had defeated Apollo's wrestling friend while he was in line buying ice cream and decided he had to go after Apollo's other 1,000 friends so he could earn the title of best friend. Turns out, he was trying to Scott Pilgrim this relationship. Apollo wrote overnight about warning around 180 of his friends before deciding to talk to BEEP0 directly about the situation. That would be quicker. I spent day 27 solely working on the Goth sheep and Polar Bear's relationship. They're not relevant for this video, so you'll have to play the game yourself to see why they became one of my favorite pairings. On day 28, I set up BEEP0 and Apollo to have a spa day at home. Unfortunately, the spa mask BEEP0 ordered had worms and sticks in it, so that was a bust. Get it together, BEEP0. I was worried when I saw the two weren't ready to converse the next day because there was only one more day before the month ended. I gave Apollo a globe, and that still wasn't enough. Thankfully, there was a D20 on the ground that day too, so I gifted him that as well, but it still wasn't enough. I set them up on a board game date as one final attempt. How would it go? This is where I saw my first repeat date, but it was a success. Apollo confronted BEEP0 about his hobby and said he wanted to be more than friends. So BEEP0 changed his mission to becoming the best couple instead. Hopefully this one wouldn't involve beating people up. On the final day, they moved out, leaving behind their plushies in one final scene. In this scene, BEEP0 made a list of couples to defeat, but Apollo expertly turned it into a bunch of double dates instead. BEEP0 agreed because it meant he'd get to go on more dates with Apollo. In their photo, they were holding adorable matching relationship mugs. And with that, my challenge was complete, just in the nick of time. If you want to create some chaotic matchmaking yourself, Love Ghostie is available on Steam right now. It's currently on sale for 10% off as part of the Wholesome Games Steam celebration. I'll have a link to it in the description below. I will be posting a full review of the game over on my blog when I'm finished with it. If you like the video, press the like. If you enjoy watching cozy content like this, make sure to subscribe. I cover that and more on my channel. With all that out of the way, I hope you're living today in a way you won't regret, and I'll see you in the next one. Pook out.